Missouri Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler this week joined with Kansas Congressman Tim Huelskamp to reintroduce the Federal Marriage Protection Amendment. The proposed constitutional amendment would restore a national definition of marriage as the union of one man and one woman. Their move follows last week's Supreme Court decisions on gay marriage. But do these latest Supreme Court rulings have any impact here in Kansas and Missouri?
Well, they may not have any impact in Kansas and Missouri on the states, but the decisions have great impact on people who live in those states, gay couples, lesbian couples who are married, because neither state, of course, allows or recognizes same-sex marriage in both their constitutions and in statutes. And that, Nick, I must tell you, presents enormous complications for those couples who may be legally married in another state, Iowa, New York, moved to this area. Now it isn't clear what federal rights they may have because they live in a state that doesn't recognize same-sex marriage. And it isn't clear whether the state benefits are available to them or how they can divorce. The Supreme Court's decision was cheered initially, and I still think as a broad statement, the gay and lesbian community is happy with what the court decided. But the practical implications in states like Kansas and Missouri are enormous, difficult, complicated, and have not been sorted out and may not be for months, perhaps years to come.
Now, this was an issue when you were talking about on your own radio program, Scott. How was this weighing up in Kansas and Missouri on your program?
Well, I think one thing we'll learn, and it frustrates me with what Vicky Hartzler and Congressman Huelskamp are trying to do, because they are tilting at windmills. And the idea that somehow an amendment's going to be passed to the U.S. Constitution that once again will return marriage to just a man and a woman is foolish. And I think time will show that many conservative Republicans are on the wrong side of history on this issue. And I think the tide has turned. It was a quick turn, too, I would add. It was only a couple of years ago that polls showed that a majority of Americans were opposed to legalizing same-sex marriage.
Well, in Missouri, it was a 70% approval for a traditional marriage amendment.
And substantially in Kansas, too.
In 2004, 2005, that was not that long ago.
But I think what we're seeing now is a moral issue and a legal issue, and I think that's where the two are confused, and Parks is correct, because people now support it. I think USA Today did a poll, said it was like 55% of the people that polled supported same-sex marriages. So now we're seeing a shift in that, and don't be surprised if they force that shift, forces people to change their opinion on it.
Let's not let the Supreme Court off the hook, because in essence, Nick, what a majority of the Supreme Court said was discrimination against gay and lesbian couples is unconstitutional on the federal level, but perfectly fine on the state level. That is an enormously complicated decision. It has ramifications across the country in states that allow same-sex marriage and those that don't. So I think what may happen in Kansas and Missouri is a real push in the years to come, not on a moral level, but just on a practical level, if not to legalize same-sex marriage, at least to recognize marriages that have been legally entered into in other states in Kansas and Missouri. That would clear up a lot of the legal mess that's been